So finalising the fonts I'm going to use, I've ended up sticking with one of the fonts I mentioned previously, which was Phosphate. But you see, if I drop down here, there's two options for it, which is basically two different styles within the same font. So what I've done is I've got the title as Bilderberg with the inline version, and I've made my name for the solid version. And this is something that you can do actually in Adobe Fonts as well. Adobe Fonts has something called font packs, where they kind of group fonts in similar styles together, which is quite cool. So the first pack that's coming up here is called Psychic Waves. And if we look at the fonts in this, there's some pretty cool fonts. And the idea is that they're kind of curated together to have a kind of a similar style. So that's something you can experiment with depending on kind of what your photo book or zine is about. Like, maybe try and find a relevant font that fits, but just be assured and sort of check out the fact that some fonts are very loaded with meaning. They can be attributed for very specific things. Oh, this is cool. Look at this otherworldly visions one. This is quite good. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate those fonts as well. So I'm just going to hit this slider here, and that'll immediately make them all work in any Adobe package. So for instance, I'm using Adobe InDesign, and immediately they'll be available to use. Now in this video, I really want to talk more about text itself. So what do you write? There are no captions in this zine. As it's a zine, it's quite disposable and throwaway and whatever. I didn't really want to get into it. I just want people to kind of look at the work and have a nice kind of set their own kind of pace and journey through it, looking at the photos to work out what's going on. But at the end, I have written a short essay. What I've done, as I'm trying to make a whole series of zines, is I've kind of created this as a little template. So all the zines that I'm going to make now, they're going to have this similar kind of background, which is I've reduced the opacity of the layer at the background image. So that's now at 69%. I pasted the circle, I filled that with white, and I've dropped the text on top. The font size for the text is 9, and I know that's good because I've printed off this cover and I've seen it like as a hard copy, and I know that it's legible at that size. And one thing to touch on fonts here is I've actually used the same font as I used on the front cover title here, but it's a different font to the body text I've written about. Now, the text for this book was zine was a bit more tricky because it's something that I photographed 10 years ago. But I knew why I went there, and I just wrote about why I went there. And basically, I went there, I knew it was the Bilderberg, and I knew there were the crazy protesters, but yeah, one of the speakers was David Icke, and this guy, it's just a crazy story where he was a football presenter, and sort of a television personality who went on the most sort of important talk show of the time. There was a talk show called Wogan, and he told the presenter that he was the son of God, and he just went off on one, and obviously that, yeah, he became it says here, the Guardian newspaper, Des Christie, called it a media crucifixion. It's absolutely wild. So again, just a really interesting character, and obviously there are interesting characters there. But in the second part of the text, what I've tried to do is I've tried to align it to why it's relevant now, because you'd be like, well, this is 10 years old, this work. So my last paragraph I've written, in the 10 years since, fueled by the rise of social media, populist politics, and a global pandemic, conspiracy theory has gone mainstream. And that's a problem for us all, as without truth, democracy dies. So you see, I've tried to find a way of kind of talking a little bit about what's in the zine, but also kind of my thoughts behind it, and about why it's relevant now. That's my take on captions. I know other people are more photographic theorists. They'll have lots of stuff they want to kind of cover and all that, but for me it's just more of a way of just communicating literally what has happened, what I've documented, and then also my kind of personal take into it. So there you go. So yeah, no captions in the scene. Obviously you can have captions, and again, my main advice would just be careful how big they are. Like, if you're going to choose a font size, you're always best just printing off. You can just make a sheet in InDesign or a text block, and basically you could just write loads of different sizes of font and just print out an A4 sheet just to sort of see exactly how each one looks. I mean, that's not a bad idea, and it's much better than paying to print a load of zines and realizing the font's so big in your zine it makes it look like a kid's book. So again, just keep that in mind. So there we go.